Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought I'd do a video looking at the Italian Tiger, or the Caro Armato Tigra Mod H1. And the reason for this is because during the Panther developers video I did on it, I kind of skipped over it because of the fact that it didn't really fit the format. When it comes to the Panther developer videos, those are basically to look at the general information when it comes to the vehicles themselves, not necessarily the history behind them. So therefore, when it comes to this Tiger, it didn't really make sense to fit it into the Panther developers in the ground section because there was so much other stuff to cover. But why not give it its own little video? So let's have a look at the story of the Italian Tiger. The story begins in the spring of 1943, where there was a meeting between Hitler and also Mussolini that would take place in Klesheim, Salzburg on the 12th of April. The Italians gave a list of material that would be requested to the Germans, and these requests were thought to be necessary for the protection of Greece, the Egeo territories, and also the Italian mainland itself. In these requests, there was a total of 1,250 tanks, something that the Germans couldn't keep up with. When it came to a part of the communications, one of them read, it was renewed the request for tanks to the German counterpart for Italy. The Germans answered that they don't have the availability of tanks that would allow them to send tanks there. It wouldn't be if they weren't immediately used. The Führer was promised to send the Sicily crews for the use, if necessary, of the German tanks of various typology, stopping in Sicily, and for the training of the Italian crews. This extract was taken from the verbal and minutes and record of the encounter that is stored at the Diario Storico del Comando Supremo, Volume 9 of Tomo 2 of the Roma 2003. And during said encounter, the Italians asked for the remaining part of the Albertung 504 that was destined for Tunisia and was still present in Sicily at the time to give their tanks to the Italian forces. The tanks that they had available at the time in Sicily were 6 Panzer IIIs, 3 Panzer IVs, and 11 Tiger tanks, but such requests weren't accepted. To confirm the promises made by Hitler, we find in a letter number 0351/43 on the 9th of the 4th, 1943, from the Deutsch General beim Hauptquartier del Ital Wehrmacht, we see the following. It is confirmed that the 9/4/43, the Führer has made to His Excellency the General D'Amato Ambrosio the following promises for the strengthening of the defences in Sicily. First, sending of personnel from a company of tanks type Tiger. Second, sending personnel of a company of tanks which was type 3 and 4. These two reports will be transported to Sicily in order to have trained crews to use the German tanks passing through Sicily to reach Tunisia, in case such a need should arise in Sicily. Other than the duty of the German personnel will be training Italian crews for the Tiger tank and also the Panzer III and IV. Sending in Sicily of a repair platoon for the Tiger tanks and a repair platoon for the Panzer IIIs and IVs, we request to send Italian mechanics to these two platoons so they can learn to do repairs on such tanks. There was also some interviews done with tankers from Italy at the time, kind of confirming a lot of these stories. The soldiers chosen to take part in this training were the best that came out of the Accademia di Modena. These soldiers had received training on driving the L3 light tank and had a direct knowledge of the 47mm anti-tank gun. Seeing the important task they were called to take part to, they received also special training on the field of tank engines. All the chosen soldiers accepted to take part in this role with enthusiasm, and the chosen soldiers will be part of what was called Compagnia Speciale, or just Special Company. They said that the relationship with the Germans was very good, despite the initial distrust from both sides, and this was possible thanks to the fantastic work done by interpreters on both sides, and to some soldiers from Alto Adige, or South Tyrol. They recall how big and spacious the Tiger was compared to the cramped L3 they had experience with, and many also recall the incredible feeling of being indestructible. Even after many years, the General di Brigata, or the Brigadier General, Vincenzo Diccio, recalled with emotions when they trained to fire the 88mm gun, hitting the first target on the first try. His college Pachera remember vividly the incredible quality of the optics and also the communication systems. All of the Italian soldiers agreed on the ease of driving and also the high mobility of the Tiger tank. The only complaint that the Italian crews had was for the need of removing the tracks to lower the tank to be able to pass under bridges and tunnels, and also for the transportation of trains. The Italian delegation thought the tube extension to traverse deep water obstacles was pretty superfluous. The whole delegation agreed on the material that the Germans were producing was so incredibly better in quality compared to the Italian one, which isn't too hard to believe, especially if you're stepping up from L3s. Some of the Italians that took part on the training recall the fantastic organization of the Paderborn, not only for the training material, but also for the very comfortable accommodation and the food being plentiful, despite the fact that not all of the German dishes were appreciated by Italian taste. During their stay, they were showed a Tiger that received countless hits, but nonetheless it brought its crew back home safely. They were showed a captured Soviet T-34 and had the chance of testing the Panther, which was called the Pantera at the time, in which the Italian crew has found the only fault to be the 75mm gun was too long, forcing the crew to keep the gun at its maximum elevation while driving off-road in particularly rough terrain to avoid damaging the tank. They also had the chance of trying the Panther because the Stato Maggiore del Regio Esercito decided that it would be co-produced in Italy in the near future and that it would have been the vehicle for future Italian armed forces. But obviously the armistice came and so on and so forth. A few months later, the 3rd of January 1944, Diccio had re-entered service in the Regio Esercito Co-Belligerante, which is the Italian Royal Co-Belligerent Army, and had the chance to compare the new M71 diesel engine of the Sherman III in service with a Canadian battalion calling it Ottimo. He later had the chance of testing a Churchill with the 57mm gun in Rimini, and he recalled being very disappointed by it, especially for its low speed. Later, during their careers, both Pachera and Diccio had the chance of comparing the Tiger to the M47 and M60A1 in service to the Italian forces, recalling the incredible consumption of fuel of the M47 and that some solutions first saw on the Tiger I could still be seen on the M60. There was also some direct testimony from Giuseppe Pachera, who at the time was a second lieutenant and was part of the Compagnia Speciale d'Istruzione. And what he said in English was the number of participants were 35, if I remember correctly, 7 officials and many junior officers. To this count, we need to add the commander, the interpreters, and many of the attendants. As a matter of fact, we weren't really an organic company. We were more of a group of personnel subdivided based on the speciality of the training, tank commander, and etc., etc. And the subdivision in platoon was for more theoretical, at least during the mission. As far as I remember, the commander was the Captain Attilio Ferrati. That wasn't from our battalion. The officials of framing were the second lieutenant Giuseppe Pachera, Vincenzo Diccio, Francesco Rotelli, Filippo Volpelandi, Torono Silvestri, Terrazzano, and Varagnolo. From the count, it results to be 1 extra officer and lacks of the second lieutenant Volpi, probably because he was destined to the command of the company for various duties. The interpreters were, other than a few tankers, were a few officials, Miel Antonio Ferrero and Max Giacobini. We reached Pacheco near Trampani the 15th of April, and after quite a lucky travel, stopped only by a bombing of the Sicilian side of the Messina Channel. We stopped in an olive grove available to the 504th Panzer Abteilung, aggregate to the Goering Division that was partially equipped with the Tigers. The training was immediately focused on the personnel and crew training, and there was never particular difficulty of learning, thanks to the capacity of our soldiers and officials, the valor of the many translators and interpreters, and of the German South Tyrol tankers. The Tiger immediately appeared to us like a machine extremely modern and a giant compared to our M42. I was personally struck by some aspects: the huge thickness of the armor, the track that alone was 3 tons, the same as our whole tank, the L3. The power and precision of the 88 gun and related optics, the telemeters, the radio, that was a transceiver station with intercom, the Maybach engine, especially the old dynamic system that allowed to drive the tank without any effort. Overall, they were quite impressed. For us, the training moved on in a more cohesive manner compared to what we did in Sicily, thanks to the availability of the didactic material and the possibility of moving and firing with the tank in the massive training ground. Like in Sicily, there were no problems with the learning caused by the different languages or due to the previous technical preparation. There was a certain arrogance, a German disdain that hurted my nerve, made it worse by the sensation that they thought we were the responsible for the misfortune in Russia. In the end, we were the poor relatives, bulky and guilty, to tolerate due to an order from the superiors. There was the possibility to go to public places, and thanks to our fame of being Latin lovers, that reached even those extra-Catholic places, and some love blossomed. Some of our drivers were sent to the Maybach factory near Switzerland frontier, and they told me about hundreds of French tanks abandoned, while some of our tank reparts in Sicily and Sardinia, armed with the same tanks, were desperately lacking in spare parts. When it comes to the speed, the effective one was close to superior to 45 kilometers an hour, but we were told not to pass 35 due to the orders from the superiors. Sometimes our tanks had fun passing such speed, even if they were aware that the order was placed in order to avoid the wear out of the wheels and the gears. Luckily, together with some crying from some women, at the end of July we received the order of re-entering in Italy. And the last thing before leaving, somebody said that we were destined for the armored division of the militia, something that had made us all angry. Maybe it wasn't true, but for sure, that morning of the 25th of July, the adventure was over, and all the training we did in the last 3 months was now useless. There's also some additional information from the German side of things, mainly from Karl Goldschmidt, but also some ideas which have been questioned. So, why is the 504th Panzer Battalion, why is it said to still be in Sicily, despite the fact that the 504th at the time was being set up to fight in Tunisia, or was in Tunisia fighting? And it seems like the reason is the 504th was divided into 2 different companies. The first one was moved to Tunisia to take part into the combat, while the remaining part remained in Sicily, firstly due to the lack of transport-capable resources, while later remained in Sicily due to the end of the fighting in Tunisia. And Karl Goldschmidt recalls, after a battalion of Italian tankers arrived without tanks, we got to training on the Tiger. Basically, none of us understood a word of Italian, but the Italians had 3 officials and 8 junior officials that were tasked as interpreters. The chief of the interpreters was a certain Captain Miel. He was from the north of Italy, and he was 1.8 meters tall and with hair of blonde reddish color. The second lieutenant, Raul Silvestri, was from Rieti, and he was born in 1921 like I was. Soon we would get a good feeling, even if Raul didn't have a single word of German and I had none of Italian. The Sunday of Easter, he invited me to visit Mount Eris. Once we got back, a big party started where the Italians invited the whole of our company. The meal had 7 dishes, and the wine was great, and the thing that wasn't really strange, seeing that Marsala, that it's known the world over for its wines, is not really far from there. and after the basic training on the Tiger with us, the Italians were sent to our training battalion in Paderborn and came back to Italy after the change of alliance made by Badoglio. I met again with Raul Silvestri at his house in Rieti when we were in Casino Pontecorvo. So there is a bit of confirmation from the other side of things. So it looks like the Italians did train on a Tiger, at least a small battalion of them, and that is the story of the Italian Tiger. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Megadino King, Professor X1718, Orangetail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.